Okay, I think we are ready. Hi everyone, and welcome to our webinar, the third webinar in our lecture series, the 8-part series, Capacity Development for Forest Landscape Restoration. ELTI is an initiative of Yale University's School of the Environment, which receives the generous support from ARCADIA, a charitable fund of Lisbet, Rausing, and Peter Baldwin. We are a global team of individuals and partner institutions who work to train and support people from all sectors and backgrounds to restore and conserve tropical forest landscapes using strategies that support biodiversity and livelihoods. So here you see the itinerary for our series. So far you've heard about the role of training of trainers in extension services and capacity development. And today we're in for a very special experience. We will have the opportunity to hear from 3 distinguished guests who are alumni of ELTI's field and online training activities and follow-up support. We are joined today by Tangu Tumeo of the Ministry of Forestry and Natural Resources in Malawi, Indraswati of the PILI-Green network in Indonesia, and Julián Andrés Giraldo, a farmer and researcher at the Center for Research on Sustainable Agricultural Production Systems, or Fundación CIPAV. We're also so grateful to have this opportunity to hear from these 3 individuals who are important environmental leaders in their countries and communities. They will not only talk about their connection and involvement with ELTI, but also, and most importantly, share their insights and experiences on the audiences, themes, and strategies for capacity development for restoration from their unique perspectives. Again, it's such an honor to welcome you 3, and we thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. In addition to these speakers, we are joined by ELTI colleagues who've been working hard behind the scenes to prepare for the session and who will be involved in the Q&A and discussion following the speaker presentation. Those colleagues are Saskia Santamaria, ELTI's Neotropics Associate based in Panama, Dr. Alicia Calle, a postdoctoral researcher with ELTI at Yale University, Zoraida Calle, ELTI's Colombia Coordinator based at CIPAV, and we have with us Dr. Eva Guerin, ELTI's Director. The agenda for today. We will first hear short 10 to 12 minute presentations from the 3 alumni in our panel, starting with Tangu, then Evie, and then we will broadcast Julián's presentation, which was recorded originally in Spanish and has voiceover translation in English spoken by Dr. Alicia Calle. Then we hope to have time for questions and discussions. Some quick housekeeping. For attendees, please submit your questions using the Q&A feature during the presentation. You're welcome to introduce who you are and where you're coming from in the chat, but it's the Q&A button that we will use at the bottom of your screen to gather questions and synthesize those at the end for the speakers. And to our fellow panelists and colleagues, we ask you to turn your cameras off when not presenting to save on bandwidth. Then turn them back on when it's your turn to present for the group discussion. This panel is being recorded and will be posted to our website and YouTube channel within the next few days. And with that, we will get started. Our first presentation is by our guest, Tangu Tumeo. Tangu is a forester by profession with 12 years of experience working with the Malawi government in the Department of Forestry, coordinating projects on sustainable forest management. She serves as the Forest Landscape Restoration, or FLR, focal point for Malawi. And together with technical partners, she has facilitated the National FLR Opportunities Assessment, the development of the National Implementation Strategy, and the National FLR Monitoring Framework. She supports the Ministry of Forestry and other government agencies to integrate the assessment results into government planning and has lobbied for international and local funding to initiate the implementation of the National FLR Strategy for Malawi. And most recently, she is facilitating the launch of the Large-Scale Forest Landscape Restoration in Africa project for Malawi. So welcome, Tangu.
Thank you very much, Julián. As I've been introduced, I am Tangu. I'm coming from Malawi. For those of you that are not familiar, Malawi is in Southern Africa, We share borders with Zambia, Mozambique, and Tanzania to the north. Let me have the next slide. So my journey on FLR, or forest landscape restoration, really started in 2015. This is after I'd worked for some time with the department. In 2015, we had the opportunity to implement a USAID funded project that was focused on restoring forest ecosystems for improved livelihoods. And at that time, we wanted to pilot the restoration opportunities assessment methodology that was developed by the BRI and IUCN in one of the landscapes that the project was being implemented in. So as a way of building capacity, two Malawians went to the United States to attend an international seminar that was organized by the US Forest Service. That's now where I got to know more about FLR and what is required and how to go about it. A second opportunity came about in 2016, now when I was privileged to also participate in the online certificate program offered by Yale-ELTI, where I got more input because the seminar was rather short and we didn't have a lot of practical experience, but when we had the online course while I was back home, it added more value because I was combining the on-the-ground assessments that we were doing and the training itself. So I participated in 2016 and Malawi started the nationwide assessment, applying the ROM methodology that year. We completed in early 2017, after which we immediately published our assessment report and developed an implementation strategy to go with it. After that, in 2018, when we had published all the documentation and are now moving into implementation, the Ministry of Agriculture had also asked for a training of frontline staff in Malawi. And I was also part of the team, supporting the team that was facilitating the trainings for the frontline staff. These are extension workers, these are practitioners, FLR practitioners that are found in districts directly implementing the projects. So it was a good opportunity for us as well to learn, to bring together the central level knowledge on FLR and the landscape level knowledge on FLR. So that, coupled with the development of the monitoring strategy in 2018, has enabled Malawi as a country to have a number of practitioners that are aware of FLR in detail and how to apply the ROM in detail. Because when we were doing all the assessments and all this documented writing, we had a national task force that was comprised of members from various ministries, private sector, non-governmental organizations that were forming the group. So all these people got to know and understand the importance of FLR, how to use the methodologies to assess the areas that are degraded, and then come up with matching restoration interventions that will, in the end, really improve the livelihoods of the communities. Next slide. Thank you. So for us, so when I'm referring to the successes here, I will talk about my own training through the online course that Yale-ELTI offered, and the training that I supported when we brought together practitioners from the country, from within the country. As a country, we piloted the ROM, and then we made a pledge immediately in 2016 as we were undergoing the assessments that we were going to restore 4.5 million hectares. This was what we agreed on as a country, because the assessment itself had concluded that Malawi as a country, almost 80% of our land and forest areas are degraded. So the pledge is almost half of our land area, but we said it's something that can be done. So for us, the training came at the right time to ensure that we build capacity as much as at a faster rate as much as possible to ensure that we get to the pledge soon enough. And for us, choosing the audience was very important because we have a lot of technical facilitators that are on the ground, and most of the interventions that have been recommended in our strategy are not new. But for us to have an understanding of a landscape approach we needed everyone to come together and build the capacity and understanding together so that we move as a team. The transferring of skills and knowledge, for us it was important that it is tailored to the participants. So if there are participants in agriculture, we speak their language. If there are participants in forestry, we made sure that we speak their language so that we all find a common ground that allows us to identify our roles and responsibilities moving forward. We also made sure that we appeal to the interests and knowledge, because each of the sectors have their own goals, and it is important that we share the role that FLR has in contributing to the goals that each one of us, whether it's in the water sector, forestry sector, or agriculture, and the role that, the contribution that FLR will make. So that was very important through the ELTI and the training that we had as a country, within the country, with support from ELTI, that we had those essential elements put together. Next slide. So for us, the themes that were very useful for the multi-sectoral team that we brought together was that we understand landscapes, not just forest in isolation of agricultural land, but we understand what landscapes mean and the land use challenges that communities and ourselves as practitioners are facing. We also wanted to understand the application of the ROM. For us, it was also essential to emphasize and understand the people component in FLR, because sometimes as foresters, I might only be interested in seeing trees standing, but there are people and livelihoods that are entangled in all this, that we needed each one of us in our groups as FLR practitioners to understand for us to deliver our services better. The other thing that was very useful for us was the understanding of successful restoration interventions in the specific areas that are there across the country. Because as I mentioned earlier, these interventions that were recommended are not new. So we wanted to understand why is it that the same interventions are successful in other areas and not very successful in other areas. So knowing how to move forward to help upscale the successful restoration interventions was very important. And lastly, it was also very vital for us to understand the costs and the benefits of FLR. Because when we were doing the assessment, we noticed that it was not going to be cheap for Malawi to restore the 80% of the country that has been degraded, not even considering the 4.5 that was pledged for restoration by 2030. So how do you reach out to a farmer to influence behavioral change? Each one of us, we realize that we need to articulate what the costs are going to be and what are the benefits are going to be clearly amongst ourselves and even to the farmers to ensure that we all understand what is going on. So those are themes were very useful for Malawi as a country when we, through the two trainings that I've referred to. In terms of methods and materials, it was very useful for us to integrate lessons learned from other areas through videos or stories within the trainings themselves, because otherwise might seem as if it's something that is not happening somewhere, but showing those visuals of before pictures of degraded areas and the after restoration pictures of successes, been portraying their successes in other areas was very important for us to understand FLR in general. So apart from that, we're also looking at peer-to-peer training. We have been doing a bit of that here in Malawi, but we also noticed that it was very vital in FLR because, for example, improved agricultural technologies are not being adopted as much by our farmers, but we understood through the trainings that encouraging that, doing more of that, allowing the farmers to talk to each other, allowing practitioners to talk to each other was very useful to improve understanding and knowledge. And of course, we also didn't want to forgo the fact that whoever was being trained had knowledge before we introduced FLR. Because at times people say, how is FLR different from everything else that we've been doing? So for us, taking into account the knowledge that facilitators have, farmers have, FLR practitioners have was very important for us to deliver successful training amongst ourselves and our colleagues. Next slide. So for us, the major achievement has been the fact that we've been able to share the knowledge with a lot of members that we've been interacting with throughout the processes since 2016. If you go to Ministry of Lands, there will be a focal point, there's a focal person there who will tell you comprehensively about FLR and how that's done. And we expect that to grow amongst the various sectors as we go along. And for us, the strategy itself is something that as government, we are pushing forward with our partners, the private sector, non-government organizations, and even farmers to ensure that we form a movement that will, in the end, allow us to make progress. So that is a huge, huge achievement that has followed the trainings that we have received in Malawi, myself and my colleagues. So far, we have been developing projects that are FLR focused. We have a GEF project that we are finalizing now from the GEF 7 cycle. We have the US government and the UK government that are also supporting FLR projects. And of course, the German government that has been in the forefront leading the process so far to ensure that after the strategy, we have implementation of the activities on the ground to show the results. Because as of now, we are in 2020, 2030, it might seem like a long time away from now, but it is not when you're talking about restoration work. So there are things that we need to do as much as possible, develop projects and implement the activities for us to get to the goal soon enough. The other thing that has been a big achievement is advocating of implementation of other of FLR in other projects. Currently, my department, the Department of Forestry, is the main facilitator of FLR, and that's where we are the leading agency. And ensuring that the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Agriculture, the Minister of Irrigation, take into account the landscape approach has been our huge achievement as well, because we would want government funding, public funds to be allocated when they are being allocated to agriculture to ensure that landscape restoration is a priority as well. Because Malawi being an agri-based economy, we need restored landscapes as soon as possible for us to feed our people. So that advocacy has really been a huge achievement after following the trainings that we have received. Next slide. Lastly, on the lessons and advice that I would want to share, during the trainings, especially the trainings that we had in country with support from Yale-ELTI, we noticed that there is need to strengthen our coordination mechanisms, because FLR, for it to be successful for us, we noticed that we need to coordinate amongst sectors, amongst players on the ground for us to be successful. So coordination, whether it's at landscape level, at national level, at regional level, is going to be very important, because the decisions that are going to be made in these various interactions that we will have are the ones that are going to influence how far we go. So there might be sector-specific challenges that will affect FLR. For example, we've noticed that others might want to be so strict or focused on their goals and might not want to look on the side to say what is being affected by what. But we are working towards ensuring that we reduce those cases as much as possible. We have also noticed that it's not as easy for other sectors to change and follow the landscape approach. For example, our colleagues in Malawi in irrigation, for example, they might just say, okay, we want to start irrigating 1,000 hectares in this area by the end of the year, so we want a dam here. And in most cases, those dams will be located in forest reserve, where we'll have to cut an area of forest for those dams to be constructed. So there's a need to continue talking amongst sectors to ensure that we get to that common goal in the end without jeopardizing what we are building. Enforcement of rules and regulations is another important thing that might break or make the progress that we're making, because there are government rules, there are local rules that communities make, but if we do not adhere to those, then our protected areas might not be as protected. So that's something that's ongoing because of poverty levels in the community. So illegal activities are still happening alongside the restoration interventions. So that's an area that we would want to strengthen as well moving forward to ensure that our results of what we are doing remain and are sustainable. The other issue that we're struggling with is the slow adoption of interventions by farmers. We've seen a growth in the numbers of farmers adopting landscape restoration interventions, but we still have a long way to go because traditionally our farming styles are not very good to our land, are not very good to our forest. Farmers would want to continue shifting cultivation, which is not a good thing at the moment with a growing population. So that's one other thing that we are moving towards dealing with through our conversations with local communities and amongst ourselves as technical partners to ensure that we get to a point where we understand where we're going as a country and we all move together. The gaps that we have noticed that are remaining at the moment on participatory monitoring. We are hoping that if we get into a point where communities and farmers are participating in monitoring of the achievements that we're making, the adoption will grow and the rule of law will also increase amongst communities because we will be learning together. We will be understanding what is happening together and mindset change we're hoping will be faster that way. The financing mechanisms, that's another area where I think we might need a little more training to say, how do we lobby for funds? It's not everybody that is well equipped in terms of how to look for funds in landscape restoration. That's an area that we would want more training on. And then lastly, governance. Governance is a huge issue in landscape restoration because tenure issues come up, culture comes up, government rules come up. So it's complicated and it's something that as a country at the moment, we are working hard at ensuring, because it's in our strategy on the how to strengthen governance of in management of land and forests. It's our priority, but it's something that I think we still need more training on and knowledge for us to make to achieve more results and move forward as a country. I think let me stop here for now. Thank you, Julián.
Thank you so much, Tangu. And for our participants, if you have any questions for Tangu for the panel, a reminder to write them in the Q&A feature, and we hope to have time to get to them at the end. So thank you very much. And now we'll switch to our next speaker. Hi, Evie. Can you activate your camera and microphone?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Okay.
So our next speaker is Evie Indraswati from the PILI-Green network. Evie Indraswati has over 15 years of experience working on conservation in Indonesia. She currently serves as a consortium coordinator for a community-based restoration program in the Bukit Barisan Selatan National Park in Sumatra. She has also worked as a consultant or coordinator on a large series of projects related to sustainable tourism, watershed management, community development in tiger habitat areas, park management, invasive species, and much more. Evie has a strong communications background, having served as the chief editor for the weekly Indonesian nature conservation newsletter for the PILI-Green network from 2004 to 2013, and having authored several books on conservation-related topics. And for some context, Evie took the ELTI online training course in 2016, and with ELTI support led a community-based forest restoration project from 2019 to 2020. She's written a book about that project, which we can share after the session. So welcome and thank you, Evie. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Julián. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening everywhere. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Indraswati from PILI-Green Network Indonesia. Here I would like to send the perspective of the social inclusive process of farmer encroachers who transform into forest conservationists. Before I start, please allow me to say thank you to ELTI, Yale University, and ARCADIA for the opportunity to share experience in this great occasion. I work with PILI, Indonesian Environmental Information Center, since 2004 and become a community-based restoration program as coordinator in 2013. We started a total of 201 hectare restoration project in Bukit Barisan National Park, or BBSNP, that funded by TFCS Sumatra. This project is targeting communities who live adjacent to national park where encroachment occurs. We also targeting the national park staff. The main objective in this project is to change people's perceptions about the importance of the function and value of the forest from the ecosystem, for instance, as a source of water, air, and other necessities of life, including non-timber forest products. Those things can be valued and could be more valuable than if they cut all the tree for coffee and cocoa plantation. We collaborate with Kelompok Pelestarian Hutan Pesanguan, or KPHP, a local community in Pesanguan village, which declares to be committed to restoring a minimum 2 hectares per year of forest that used to be their plantation. The next, please. When we started the program is 2017, I knew only dealing with restoration technical issues. And there was no regulation about restoration in the conservation area, not until the next year when the government issued about restoration and a protected area regulation. Afterward, using the knowledge I got from ELTI training on forest restoration strategies with community involvement in 2016, we started to developing in the community approach and restoration program and try to implement two soft skills for social management, community-based forest restoration in Pesanguan. We also received additional support from UNDP Sumatera Tiger Project to implement the concept and ending Petai Kayu and Sri Menanti village, along with the Pesanguan village as a targeted community, including BBSNP staff. ELTI is supporting us in restoring 3 hectare encroached area in Pesanguan. Next, please. When the success of the restoration program depends on stakeholder involvement, therefore, the social management soft skills training program are not limited to 3 communities from our project site, but also the national park staff, NGO partner, and local government. We selectively choose staff who can involve in this training to make sure that they can understand the issue and implementing it on their business process. Why soft skill in social management? Restoration is not only about covering or replanting forests. It's not just a technical issues, but it's also need they have engagement and commitment from the actors, which are the villager and the national park manager. There is 4 level indicator in this social management capability. The first is the ability to motivate and to build awareness about forest functions. Secondly is communication ability, which is needed for explaining the importance of being involved. The third is the ability to develop a network with partners. And last level is capacity lobbying or negotiating to seek long-term support for forest restoration. Next slide, please. This training is divided into 3 stages. The first stage, we develop training development. The second stage, we conducted serial thematic training for 8 months. The first thematic about policies and share experience. And the second, participatory mapping and social analysis at the community level. And the third, restoration techniques, including types of native forest plants in BBSNP as ecosystem reference. Then the last stage is direct assistance and practicing to manage a 3 hectare restoration demonstration plot and Pesanguan with KPHP. The method is carried out outdoor than class material in the focus discussion series, regular community assistance with group discussion once a month during routine groups meeting, field studies in other locations outside of Pesangon, series assistance by actively communication through WhatsApp group for participant update. For the capacity building by implementation activity, they have a management of 3-hectare demonstration plot, starting from nurseries, determining to space, selecting species, planting, maintenance to long-term participatory monitoring. The next, please. One of the results achieved during the training process is the effectiveness of the training. When the method used during the training stage are assigned to participants and will be evaluated, then the training is carried out thereafter. Some are at level up to communication skills, and some have reached the lobby with a fairly good planning stage at the end of their assignment and the participant daily practice. In addition, this restoration also requires lobbying from the involvement of many stakeholders across village and institutions mobilize support for conservation works at the landscapes level. The biggest thing that can be done with the people Pesangon village, whose village has a red area for encroachment for national park managers. Now they already have a group of conservationists from the Pesangon Forest or KPHP, and they have a commitment to restore the forest at least 2 hectares per year. In addition, they were also designated at the model village for conservation of the BBSNP. Next slide, please. The lesson can be drawn out, of course, that the conservation area buffer community still needs support and a joint learning process to get a stable economic business along with the conservation education process to raising public awareness. For this reason, it is important to developing community-based forest restoration, informal and informal education, both in schools or government program developing, especially around buffer village bordering conservation forests and national parks. Finally, that last but not the least, I will quote a sentence from a local champion from Pesangon village. At first, we only knew that the forest contains trees. It turns out there are many species of trees inside the forest. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Evie. And we have some questions coming along that we want to make sure we have time for. So we'll move on to our next speaker and then hopefully have time for a panel. And in any case, we can send some of your questions to these speakers, especially the ones that are specifically tailored to their presentations. So thank you again. And our last presentation is by Julián Andrés Giraldo, a farmer and researcher at Fundación CIPAV. CIPAV is a Colombian organization dedicated to research, training, and outreach of sustainable agricultural production systems. For more than 3 decades, CIPAV has done participatory research with the farmers of the smallholder community of Bellavista El Dovio in the Western Andes of Colombia. Our speaker, Julián, grew up in this community and has been involved in participatory research since his childhood. After studying rural education, Julián joined the CIPAV team and worked for 9 years as an extensionist of the Colombian Sustainable Cattle Ranching Project, an alliance that involved the World Bank, Fedegan, CIPAV, the Nature Conservancy, Fundo Acción, and the UK government. Currently, he combines his work as a researcher and extensionist with his activities as a farmer and community leader. Julián, who embodies the values of rural sustainability, is deeply respected and admired by his colleagues and by other farmers. So welcome today. Bienvenidos, Julián. Julián recorded his presentation in Spanish earlier this week, and we will now broadcast it with English voiceover translation done by Dr. Alicia Calle.
Hola, mi nombre es Julián.
Hello, my name is Julián Andrés Giraldo. I want to thank ELTI and CIPAV for the opportunity to share the experiences and the process of training I have received throughout the years. And today I will be sharing my thoughts on strengthening rural identities and attachment to the land through training. To speak about peasants and the love of the land, I want to share the words of my own father, Ramiro Giraldo, a 66-year-old farmer who told me that for him, peasants are people who live in the countryside and rely on the outcome of hard and constant work. We are rooted in the land, and with a great sense of belonging, we put into practice lessons that have been transmitted to us for generations. We carry ancestral knowledge that may seem rustic today, yet continues to sustain society. We are attached to our families, and with unity and patience, we face daily work that exhausts the body, but not our illusions and our desire to improve. On the topic of peasants, it is important to discuss rural education because there is an imbalance between two fronts that are not properly integrated. On one hand, we have family learning grounded on values, cultural traditions, and manual labor in the field, which generates a strong attachment to the land. On the other, we have formal public education, which does not distinguish between urban and rural contexts, lacks transversality across areas, offers few relevant concepts, discourages rural youth and children from staying in their land, and provides little stimulus other than graduating high school and going to the city. This is why I believe that a dialogue of knowledge and participatory research can bring together both learning fronts closer by integrating traditional and academic knowledge. In my community, we are the result of a process of participatory research and dialogue of knowledge, and I want to highlight some important milestones. In 1987, the CIPAV Foundation arrived to our community. CIPAV is a research center that focuses on participatory research. We work together with them to generate knowledge, and this enabled us to overcome strong barriers, like the desire to migrate to the city, or the inability to see that restoring our degraded environment was in our own hands, and that we could stay and be proud of our peasant culture. Thus, we generated a partnership that remains strong and active 30 years later. In 1993, I began working as a co-researcher with CIPAV. A co-researcher is a local support, a child or youth that provides their knowledge of the territory to the research, to measure and record data, and also to generate a link between the researcher and the community. Co-researchers do not get paid because they are usually underage, but they do receive a financial incentive that must be invested in their academic formation, which is how I was able to become a professional. In 2006, I became a researcher with CIPAV, and I had the chance to visit other regions, both to learn and to share my own knowledge. In 2011, I met ELTI and began a very interesting training process. And this year, I attended 2 courses on connectivity corridors. In 2012, along with 3 colleagues from CIPAV, I had the opportunity to travel to Brazil for an internship on plant propagation. Later that year, me and my cousin Adriana, both ELTI alumni, received support for a project called Training Children and Youth for the Study of the Phenology of Balso Blanco, a tree of importance for the restoration of the Colombian Andes. In 2013, I attended another course about compensation tools for ecosystem services. In 2015, a new partnership was started between ELTI, CIPAV, and SOCLA to deliver an international course on agroecological restoration. In 2016, El Dovio, my community, was elected as an ELTI training site, and we as a community became trainers for these courses. In 2016, we had a silvopastoral heirs course, and then in 2017, 18, and 19, we participated as trainers in 3 more versions of the international course on agroecological restoration. Using this training and the opportunities I was given as both a peasant and a professional, I now work in the transference of knowledge to other communities and regions for a variety of diverse audiences, such as peasant farmers and agriculture entrepreneurs, farmers associations, students and professionals from the agriculture and environment sectors, decision makers from the local, national, and regional levels, international visitors with whom we have formed cooperation and friendship networks, and networks of pilot or demonstration farms that serve as lighthouses for the regions. In these trainings, I combine lectures and hands-on training through field days, workshops, and courses, and I use a language that is appropriate to the different audiences, although always preserving the essence of the message. In the trainings and projects in which I participate, I identify some common principles. One is sharing knowledge through examples, such as pilot farms in various biophysical and socioeconomic contexts, results of research and training conducted with CIPAV and other institutions, and the application of my own traditional peasant knowledge. As an example, I share this picture of Los Corbones farm, which belongs to me and my family, and where I have applied a good portion of what I have learned. In addition, my training is always based on participatory research aimed at generating, validating, and adapting technologies. And I value each training event as an opportunity for learning through a dialogue of knowledge and feedback with farmers. I also use rural extension exercises that seek to transcend from concepts to attitudes to create a lasting change. I always take into account the realities of producers and their communities and the goals of the projects, which is why I use participatory farm planning. It is also important to identify and respect the different rhythms of learning and adoption, and to apply methodologies that generate trust and appeal to people's feelings. For example, farmer-to-farmer exchanges, highly graphic, multi-temporal presentations that show changes over time, seed exchanges, and the sharing of economic results, which help people make adoption decisions. In terms of the content and tools that I have received from ELTI, CIPAV, and others, I rely on the knowledge about ecological restoration, ecosystem services, silvopastoral systems, and agroecology. I have also learned and applied very practical elements to make property diagnosis, such as the restoration rationale taught by one of our mentors, Dr. Ricardo Rodriguez from LERV at the University of Sao Paulo, which teaches that there are no magic recipes and that we need to learn how to read nature in order to make the right choices. I have also developed the capacity to negotiate with farmers the productive reconversion and liberation of areas for conservation, which we call ecological exchanges, and the use of tools that enrich property characterizations, such as the formats for the environmental adaptation of rural properties and the identification of environmental liabilities, which is also adapted from LERV in Sao Paulo. The picture at the bottom shows me with the Pinzon-Tibaduiza family as we analyze the results of their farm planning exercise. And here is another tool, a zoning exercise in the farm La Pradera in Boyacá. Here we identify areas that are currently under conservation and must remain so, areas where we need to generate more connectivity through the implementation of biological corridors, opportunities to improve by releasing critical production areas that should instead be conserved, such as steep hills, eroded lands, and areas near critical ecosystems. And finally, those areas that are suitable for the implementation of agroforestry and silvopastoral systems. Within the training process, I also identify other key tools. For example, the identification of value chains for alternative products. In the picture, Carlos Molina from El Atico Nature Research shows us the use of timber from the prunings of trees in silvopastoral systems. Another tool is providing evidence of environmental and productive improvements through the adoption of silvopastoral systems. This is something that people really appreciate when they get the chance to see it. Highlighting examples of farmers' associations and small agricultural businesses, both of which are instrumental for rural development. And previously, I mentioned the silvopastoral heirs because I also work with youth and children to strengthen their love of the land, intergenerational exchange, and the transmission of knowledge. I can also identify a series of results and achievements of this training process. At the level of my community, there has been a shift in power relations towards more equal opportunities. There is a group of young innovators, researchers, and professionals who have received an education and returned to the community to apply our knowledge. There's an active generational exchange. We have sovereignty in the management of our natural resources, including water, forest, and even our productive systems. Our livelihoods have improved, as has the permanence on the land, and we have generated opportunities for collective learning. At the professional level, I would highlight the trust and institutional support I received from CIPAV, ELTI, SOCLA, and other allies, the credibility among farmers and communities that I have served, the achievement of goals in all the projects that I have executed, the development of comprehensive rural extension processes, And finally, the successful training of local talents, such as my friend in the photo, Isaac Gomez from La Estancia Farm in Boyacá. We trained him, but today he has gone on to train others in an autonomous way, thus guaranteeing the continuity of the training process in the regions. And at a personal level, I have enhanced my discipline and confidence in my own work. I have applied new skills and knowledge in my community and my farm. I have gained the opportunity to know other cultures and traditions. I have formed networks of cooperation and friendship, some of whom I remain in touch with over a decade later. In addition, the satisfaction of doing what I most enjoy and family integration. And this is my daughter Violeta doing maintenance on one of her trees of the genus Prunus. There are also key lessons and recommendations. First, the project beneficiaries deeply value the technical support we provide when offered through rural extension methods. But sometimes there is a mismatch between farmers' rates of learning and adoption and the project timelines. Similarly, the short duration of many projects can limit opportunities for monitoring and learning, which is why local pilot farms with consolidated systems, agroforestry, silvopastoral, or restoration, are instrumental. Also, ideally, we should strive to avoid the spatial scatter of the beneficiaries in order to achieve collective impacts, for example, at the watershed scale. I also think that training has been overly focused on technical issues. And while that is the essence of our work, I do think I need to delve more into social issues. For example, social marketing to help us understand communities better and transmit knowledge more effectively. And finally, there is always room for improvement in my own communication skills to enhance knowledge sharing. Skills such as better slides with clear messages, better command of the stage, and the use of an adequate language. In closing, I would like to say that in my opinion, my success as a trainer is the product of a synergy between being a farmer and community leader, an extension agent, and a researcher, which results in the possibility of transmitting messages to the producer from an integrated perspective.
Thank you so much, Julián, for sharing this really important perspective on community engagement. Y muchísimas gracias, Julián, por su presentación y por compartir esta perspectiva muy importante sobre el involucramiento y interacción con las comunidades.
Muchas gracias, Julián, por todo el apoyo y por la oportunidad de participar en este evento.
So with that, Evie and Julián y Tangu, can you activate your cameras? Julián puede activar su cámara y micrófono and microphones. And in addition, we'll have Saskia Santamaria and Alicia Calle helping with simultaneous translation. So thank you again. We really appreciate your presentations, and there were a lot of interesting themes, and it was so fascinating to see how the strategies that you're involving are different at different scales in different countries, but also have very common themes, especially when it comes to enhancing incorporating local knowledge into your activities and working with communities on their terms. Some questions from the chat from the Q&A feature. Could you expand a little bit more about what were the most effective methods that you used for interacting with farmers and community members? Aspects that were important to keep in mind when being involved in training. Let's start with Tangu and Evie while
All right, thank you, Julián. For us, I think learning from the successful implementation that other communities or other farmers had undertaken was very vital. Because, for example, conservation agriculture in my country, the adoption is very low. But then there are farmers that share stories that it is working for them. So for us, taking the farmers that are still not yet adjusted to the idea, to see, to learn and hear from the next farmer who is engaging in the interventions was very important for us to get to a point where we influence mindset change and we increase the knowledge of the farmers. The other thing also was listening, and because FLR doesn't have to be one size fits all in all areas. So in other areas, culturally, they maintain and restore specific areas. For example, in my tribe, the Chewas, they always keep trees in their graveyards. So you don't expect to go to that area and not find trees in a graveyard. So culturally, that also assisted when you get to their point where you say culturally, can you see that we are losing this tree species, we are losing forest cover in these areas? What do you think we should do? And then start from there, bring in your technical expertise that will build their understanding was also very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Tangu. Evie?
Yes, it is just what would be beneficial for FLR to implement direct restoration and conservation basic incomes, the population implementing FLR. I think that people have a tangible and intangible value. They can have fresh air, better water resources, harvesting non-timber forest product, and that produces from FLR. Thank you.
And Julián?
Nosotros siempre trabajamos con base en ejercicios de planificación predial participativa que permiten integrar a toda la familia en diagnósticos de sus propios predios.
We always use a participatory approach to our farm planning, so everyone can input their perspective into the planning, and it's not just the perspective of me, but of all the members.
Con esto logramos entonces tener una visión integral del predio y de las comunidades, y de ese modo generar un proceso participativo que después se acompaña y se monitorea mediante ejercicios de extensión rural.
So with this, we can approach a more integrated form of developing the plan. This way we know the farmers and also the community. And with this, we have different perspectives that can help us make our job better. And make monitoring afterwards too.
Wonderful, thank you. There's a question, actually a few different questions that I'll synthesize about the extent of women's participation in your project. How were they incorporated into the projects? To what extent did they contribute to the success of the projects? And were there specific differences in your methods of engaging with them? First, Evie or Tangu?
Yes, we have involved of women in this project, and they have a commitment, and we have they are together creating what is political and household like a water. So that's the women participating for our approach the restoration forest.
And Evie, were there differences in how you all engaged with the women and with the men?
Nothing. I think they have same opportunity to have my projects, and they have enthusiastic for them, women and men. Like this, there's nothing different.
For Malawi, it started for us when we were doing the national assessment. We thought that it was going to be very important for us to make our assessments what we call gender responsive. So in this case, we considered the country dynamics to say where we have more women, where we have more men, so that when they were recommending interventions, they suit the people that are there. Because for us in Malawi, we understand that we say women do not have that much time to undertake some of these interventions, as much as they are the most affected as the main group of farmers and food producers in the country. So ensuring that they have a voice when decisions are being made, because culturally, most women don't own land, but they are the ones that do most of the growing. So when it comes to implementing landscape restoration, getting their voice heard was very important for us to ensure sustainability of what we are doing at the moment. So we had a short, a 1-year project with support from IUCN, where we tried to get the message on FLR to women, because we do not have enough extension workers, and the messages might not reach to the women as much as we would want to. So we had our farm radio project, where we had women groups sitting together, listening to the radio and discussing restoration interventions. And through that, we noticed that they are very enthusiastic. They have ideas and knowledge that they would want to share and then go and implement in their farmlands at the end. And we really would want to value the contribution that women make to landscape restoration moving forward, as much as we're still moving towards ensuring that they have land ownership, they have a lot more decision-making powers, but we are getting there, and it is working so far.
Thank you, Tangu. And Julián.
Los procesos, como comentaba ahora, son participativos y siempre involucran mujeres, también involucran jóvenes e involucran niños. Los procesos más exitosos que tenemos son los que tienen igualdad de oportunidades para todos.
So as I've mentioned previously, all of our processes involve women, youth, and even children. And with this different perspective, we ensure that there are more successes with this equal opportunities, by giving equal opportunities so everyone participates. We have known that there's a more success rate in our projects.
Y frente a las diferencias entre capacitar hombres o mujeres, no hallamos diferencias, porque realmente el trabajo exitoso en las fincas, el trabajo rural, es el que se da en equipo, un equipo que no discrimina ni por género ni por edad, sino que tiene un norte definido para cumplir unas metas.
And in terms of any differences between training men and women, we haven't really seen any differences, but on the contrary, integrating all the perspective is actually what it makes it more successful, because without any discriminations and making sure that everyone participates, you can achieve your goals in a better way.
Thank you so much to all our speakers, and for Saskia and Alicia for helping with the translation. I know we only got to 2 questions, but unfortunately we've run out of time. So I want to thank the speakers again for their wonderful presentations, and everyone for logging in around the world for your participation. And as mentioned, we've received over 20 questions, and we will distribute those to the speakers. This presentation is being recorded. We'll post those at the link that Saskia has provided, or will provide in the chat, and to ELTI's YouTube channel, where we'll have this presentation, Julián's original presentation in Spanish, and some comments on our website to your questions. And these presentations were by 3 of the thousands of ELTI alumni that have participated in our training activities since 2006. And we welcome you to go on our website, the ELTI website at elti.yale.edu, elti.yale.edu. We invite you to check out more stories and alumni-led projects with experiences from around the globe. So this is just scratching the surface of all the wealth of knowledge that our past participants have to share on this theme. For Spanish speakers, ELTI is offering a series of 3 online courses in Spanish on forest restoration, agroecology and agroforestry, and silvopastoral systems, with potential field experiences in Latin America at a later date. We just launched the enrollment period for the first in the series, Forest Restoration in Productive Landscapes. So check out more information on our website, and we welcome you to forward this opportunity to your colleagues and networks. Also, in a few months, we will be launching the next call for applicants to ELTI's year-long online certificate program, Tropical Forest Landscapes, Conservation, Restoration, and Sustainable Use. If you are interested in learning more about this program, you can also go to this website, tropicalrestorationcertificate.yale.edu, or contact us at tropicalcertificate@yale.edu for more information. And then please join us for our next session in the series on September 24th, Building Logical Frameworks for Action, presented by Karen Bucht, coordinator of ELTI's Africa and Blended Training Programs. And with that, thank you again to everyone for joining us today and our speakers for their inspiring messages and insightful lessons about training work around the world. And we hope you all as participants and the speakers stay safe and healthy during this global health crisis, and that these talks have served as some much needed inspiration. We look forward to seeing you soon, and take care. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tangu. Thank you, Julián. Gracias, Julián. Gracias. Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
Gracias, Julián.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Adiós.